Hello, digital warriors, and welcome back to the Forge of Unicorn podcast. Today we have an interesting guest, Alexander Steeb. Alex is an investor and partner at Equity Tree, a Munich-based private equity, and Alex is a special guest because he's one of a kind in Europe that made a unicorn, PharmaLex. Alex, it's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you, Mike. Very nice to be here and looking forward to discuss our topic of today.
Yes, and today's topic will be Alex's experience in picking up a real unicorn against the research that we have done and the 6 anti-patterns that we have found. With Alex, we will try to understand what made the difference to bring PharmaLex to the point that he was doing the disinvestment. If I am correct in my note, Alex was 1 billion and 3, right?
Yes, 1.3 billion US dollars. It's publicly announced, so it's a clear figure.
Yeah. And this is also an interesting company because it's a pharmaceutical one where we know that regulation is pretty strict. So I'm really eager to deep dive into this real story with you. But without further doing, I would love that you introduce yourself to our listeners. Please, the stage is yours.
Yes, thank you. So, as you mentioned, I'm based in Munich. I have a background in finance. I'm sort of started as a numbers person myself, but I then had the pleasure to work at the intersection between a private equity investor on the one hand side and an entrepreneur building a unicorn on the other hand side. So I think that was really the sort of the most defining thing of my career, that I saw both viewpoints, the very financial driven, return oriented view of an investor and the very people driven, vision driven part of an entrepreneur. And I think we get into this later in your questions, but this is how I started, coming from the private equity investor in Munich, but then working primarily with their portfolio company PharmaLex, which is advising pharmaceutical companies all around the globe on their journey through the regulatory jungle, I would say. You can imagine that developing a new pharmaceutical product nowadays costs multiple billions of dollars. It's extremely complicated. It takes 10 years, and maybe with the help of AI, this can be reduced. But as of now, it's still that way. And most importantly, it probably takes 100,000 pages and more in documentation. And this is where PharmaLex helped global companies. And now PharmaLex was a hyper-growth story. The company grew from 200 people in 2016 to 3,500 people in 2022, mostly through organic growth, but also inorganic growth. So we did so-called buy and build strategy, where we acquired, partnered with smaller companies all around the world to form a larger group, which needed to be integrated. And yeah, that was so successful that in the end, AmerisourceBergen, now Cencora, acquired PharmaLex for 1.3 billion. My personal role was sort of head of M&A, and I was working closely with the CEO, Thomas Duppmeier, and the head of corporate development. And after PharmaLex was then sold, the three of us decided to start something new. And so we started Equity as an entrepreneurial investor and partner for professional services companies, where we help them to basically follow a similar journey, grow their business while keeping their vision, people, culture in mind.
And what I love of your new company is that you have in the motto that you indeed support them, not only with money, but also with hand-on support. And this is something that not that many PE and VC they are doing. And this is for me something remarkable because you put really in the hands of your founders that you are investing with the experience of picking up a unicorn.
Yes, exactly. So what we realized and what also proved to be a challenge is that we transitioned from more of the entrepreneurial role into the investor role. And this is quite a change, right? You have to, most people who found a fund who start to invest come from the investment world. They have been partners at private equities before, right? So they're cultured in that whole system. So we are a bit different there in our approach. And definitely you need to learn to bridge that gap and take the best practices from both sides. But I think that's what sets us apart. We are still more coming from the entrepreneurial side.
That is indeed not common, and typically the PVC that they are doing that, they have a different kind of approach and mindset indeed, because it's not only the spreadsheet with the financial indicators, but also all the expertise as an entrepreneur to understand the culture of a company that you want to acquire and how to help them to grow.
Yeah, and maybe here one important point, right? While PharmaLex was a unicorn in the end and quite a large global company, we now partner with smaller companies, 50 people, 100 people. But especially there, as probably most people know who have ever worked in those companies, it's less about the exact numbers, it's less about the exact budget. The importance of the people and what they are doing is so much greater in a smaller company because it's just a different game than for large enterprise companies.
Yes, and I guess we are jumping into the topic, people. A unicorn is a unicorn not only because they have a great product, but because they have great people, isn't it?
For sure. I mean, you cannot achieve greatness without great people.
Yes. How do you see this organic and unorganic growth in, for instance, PharmaLex or in the company that you have today, achievable and sustainable in a sort of engineeristic way? There is a formula?
The important point here to consider is what type of company is it again? If you invest in a company which is building infrastructure, which has machinery, which has hard assets, then maybe it's less about the people, because in the end, you can plan quite well what you invest in the machinery, how long will it run, and so on, right? But PharmaLex, in the end, was a type of consulting business. And we now also focus on professional services. So those are all people business. And especially there, right, you have what they call walking assets. Your assets are can walk and they can't walk away. Most importantly, if they don't like it anymore, you cannot force them to stay and give all they got. And especially in that kind of environment, finding and creating the right culture and the alignment is sort of the most important thing. And this is already the case if you have just one company. But if you then set out to combine multiple companies, you can imagine that each of them will have a bit their different own culture, their different own ways of doing things. And you need to align them, right? It's like if you have your different personal friends groups and maybe all of them have some peculiarities, have some different interests, you bring them together. There's an intricate way of managing that to then in the end form a bigger group where everything is working smoothly together. And so this was the biggest challenge and probably also the biggest success factor for what we did at PharmaLex.
That is indeed what we observe in the research and we put under the umbrella of behavioral engineering, how we help individual with data that we call it sociometrics to interact and collaborate between themselves and the others. Because how we behave toward our individual and then they behave with us is a mirror that starts from what we do. Good. And this is something that for me is very intriguing because if we think when we come from the university, you come from a financial background, I come from an engineeristic background. But when we were studying, still I guess the academic part was something related to an old model of industry. more related to manufacture, where EQ, the emotional intelligence and the empathy, wasn't that much highlighted as the success factor of the new industry. Isn't this something that you observe in PharmaLex or in the other companies that you have now that are more technologically advanced than the manufacture chain?
Yes, definitely. So in university, and as you mentioned, I mean, I studied finance. There's always one true and clear answer, right? This is what I liked about finance. There's a lot of mathematical, similar to engineering. I mean, in the end, you don't really need to discuss with your professor about your exam because it's clear it's either right or wrong.
Yes.
But in the real life, as we all know, this is not so easy. And oftentimes the feedback loops are very long. This makes it challenging, right? Because you do something, but you don't know was it right or wrong. You will only find out a few years later. And by then you have made a lot of other choices. So yes, definitely this is in the end, what the leaders of an organization and those who, I mean, take over that responsibility of steering an organization will have to do to manage much more that soft factors, soft decisions with limited information, with uncertainty under the fog of war, where there's no clear answer. But this is also the more interesting part, I would say.
Yes. If everything would be written on the stone, I guess it won't be that exciting.
Yeah, exactly. And I just one additional point, right? I guess with the addition of AI and what we are now seeing there, I would assume that this part, I mean, right, if you differentiate between the softer part and sort of the hard skills, and you assume that AI will lower the barrier for the hard skills further and further, because, right, much of it is abstracted away. And while you needed an expert 5 years ago, maybe now you can just chat with a natural language model. The soft skill part will become even more important and will be the differentiating factor in the future, I would say.
Yes, AI used in the proper way is indeed a human potential enhancer. If we are capable to stay in the driving seat with the steering wheel and moving the direction of the creation of something that could be a product or a service, leveraging AI to fix the limits that we have, and then creating around the people, the ecosystem that they need, absolutely with you. Absolutely. This is the game changer, especially in venture capital, backing up pre-seed and seed startups, helping them with everything they need. And this is what I love of your private equity, helping them with everything they need to succeed and grow linearly. And then finally exponentially, because I believe that this is the best way to help. It's like when you have to nurture a kid, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And in a way, it will be a great leveling of the playing field in a way, because smaller organizations will benefit from it because they suddenly can also compete with larger organizations in a way when AI makes, I mean, technology more accessible, helps you as a small team to achieve much greater things suddenly. So we see that as a big disruption. We know that investing in professional services can also be a bit at risk by AI, right? I mean, some people say there's no need for professional services in 10 years because everything will be AI. We don't believe in that. We believe in the human element, and that in this period of change now, especially small organizations with a clear vision, with a clear purpose, can benefit from it and provide even greater service and therefore success.
I agree with you that I'm skeptic that AI will replace. AI without somebody that drives AI doesn't go anywhere almost. And the example could be a good product designer can be really enhanced with AI, creating more ideas around the personas that are using the product, creating scenarios of A/B test, and then with the right practices, for instance, of Lean UX or with paper prototyping, start to create real examples with the user to understand the reality check about their hypothesis. So in the concept phase, I totally agree with you that AI used in the right way is a disruptor. I'm less prone to say that in the production phase, AI is still in its genesis. I see the disaster that AI is making in code. Code generated by AI is something that we can call it spaghetti.
Yeah, probably there will be a great reckoning at some point where we realize we have accumulated now exponentially more technical debt by coding exponentially more, and somehow we still have to solve it ourselves.
Yeah, that I guess is the part of the research that I love the most to discuss with people like you, because helping startup, I see a lot of industries and a lot of people that nowadays they say, okay, I am a one only founder of my company. I use vibe coding. I will do the application and then I go in production. Okay, buddy. To go in production, you need something more than vibe coding and only you keeping up the shop. But if this is a founder, okay, we can help the founder. But if this mentality goes into the PVC, then could be really tough. And working with a lot of PVC, it seems that not all of them, they have the tools that you have. So supporting with governance, with mentoring, with coaching. But even less, they have tools to do upskilling so that the people that you have at the core when you onboard and you acquire the startup in pre-seed or seed or even Series A, they have certain skills and they have a certain number. Then, as your story with PharmaLex, the number grows and can grow linearly, can grow exponentially, can grow organically, can grow unorganically, and you need to absorb this social disruption, because at the end, when you put a new element in the team, it's a social disruption anytime. Do you have any observation about this phenomenon?
From my perspective, the training, again, we can differentiate it in the hard skills and the soft skills, right? Of course, you need to invest in the hard skill training where you have a structured plan, where you teach the people how to use the new products you have implemented, how to improve their skills at the things they do for their job. But what we mostly focus on, because this is to us sort of the thing that gets more often overlooked, is the soft skill training. And this is also less tangible, right? I'm not talking about a workshop about, how you interact with your colleagues in the workplace. What I have in mind here much more in those small companies that we are working with is, for example, something very, very simple, such as the management sending out a bi-weekly, monthly email to everyone in the organization, aligning them on what's happening. So the communication part, right? This is not training per se, but I would classify it a bit under it, because in a way it's training everyone on, hey, this is who we are. This is our mission. This is why we're doing it. Those are the challenges. Those are the people who are doing an excellent job. And this needs to come from the CEO. It should not come from your communications department. And this is one of those super clear things that we always implement once we partner with a company, because we have learned from our experience, especially if so many things happen, right? There's a rapid change, always difficult for the people, that you just need to communicate a lot and take them along the journey. And that trains sort of the muscle of the organization in terms of alignment and common vision, which is to us the most important one.
Yes. And looking at the different companies that we help, if there is something that seems to be a success factor, is when the CEO is able to establish what we say that is the purpose-driven organization, where everybody is fully aware of which is the purpose of the company, which is the mission that we are doing, which is the goal that we want to reach. And a lot of time we see that these companies, they use OKRs to drive this mission alignment. Also, it's intriguing how some of these CEO, they work specifically to tune the mindset and the culture using these tools. So, for instance, with programs like technical excellence. So we were able to do the MVP, but the MVP is not anymore enough because we need to go in production. We need to grow the product and the skills and the people that will support the development and the post-production phase. So this is something that we observe. Do you observe this as well, or do you observe also other ingredients that makes a unicorn?
I think this is really, for us, the most important thing. As I mentioned, with small companies, the percentage of success being determined by individual people is much higher, right? If you have an organization with 100,000 people, one individual is still important, but it doesn't change so much. In a smaller organization, it's much more important. So when we look at companies to partner with, to invest in, the most important thing for us is the management and then the CEO. And there, it again relates to our own experience, right? If you want to achieve something great, the sort of strive for excellence needs to come from the front. And I always have to think of someone, he's called Frank Slootman. I hope I didn't butcher the name. He was the CEO of Snowflake. And I just looked up the quote again because he brings it, I think, so clearly to the point when he said the people think I hire a bunch of people and then I sit back and wait for greatness. They have no idea that they have to relentlessly drive every second of the day, every interaction, and seek confrontation. And he said, it's really hard to have the mental energy to bring that to every single instance of the day. And I think this is what we're looking in a CEO, right? He or she needs to bring that urgency to the organization in every single interaction, because that drives then the whole organization from the front to achieve a similar level. And yeah, this is the characteristic we are looking for when we are partnering with companies.
That is intriguing because indeed are the principle of behavioral engineering, where typically you are what you do more than what you say. And with with a CEO that talks about greatness but is lazy on the chair, the role model is creating what in behavioral engineering is called cognitive dissonance. So what you are preaching is not what you are doing, and people will notice, and this will create a dissonance in the company culture that starts from the root of the company. And then we start to see companies that they default to a stagnation, where mediocrity becomes the killer, the silent killer.
And I've seen in your research, right, that you also looked at the disengaged employees and the problem that this is posing, and that this is one of the sort of silent killers of great performance. And the more I'm thinking about the way you have arranged your different theses, the more sort of there forms a mental map in my head, how all of them are intertwined, right? Because if you don't have a strong leader who's pushing for the urgency, and he's pushing for the urgency because he really sees a problem, a need, something great to achieve, the more you will lose the people and your risk that they become disengaged. And if there's not a common vision, if there's not common communication, if you don't give the people the room to develop, then one problem leads to the other, so to say. So it's all one big machinery which needs to run smoothly in the right way to then achieve greatness.
Yes, and you found something that not everybody understood from the research. The researcher found 6 anti-patterns, but when we find one in the company, in an organization, we know that this is the final stage of a ripple effect, and then it will trigger sooner or later the others. Because at the end is indeed there is a correlation, the causation. If a company is stagnating in the mediocrity, it means that the larger majority of people, they behave in a way that the final compound is mediocre. You can have unicorns inside the company, but we know since the beginning, when we observe the company, they will leave, because it's like putting a lion in a cage. It's not the proper environment. It will try to do everything to evade. But yeah, this is indeed important, because when in an organization they start to have this dissonance between intention and behaviors, you start to observe people that are disengaged. And you saw from the research, the Gallup report from last year, 77% of the worldwide labor force is disengaged. So I'm asking myself, wow, guys, how much disengagement is out there? That this backs up indeed with the number that only 2.5% of companies, they are able to become unicorns. And after 1 year, only half of them, they are able to keep the horn on their head. So the odds to be great is not that big lately.
Yeah, no, I mean, when I hear that, it burns in my heart, right? Because you can understand all those people who are disengaged, they probably have a terrible time because they have to do a job where they don't feel a sense of belonging, where they don't feel appreciated, where they don't have the feeling they're creating value. Otherwise, they wouldn't be disengaged. And it's such a huge waste of human talent and economic welfare to everyone that could be then distributed and used for other sensible things. So I definitely think, right, disengagement is one of the most underestimated killers of performance. We see that, and we think the best leaders try to fix it by giving the people the autonomy, the purpose, and the sense of belonging. So you need to feel part of something greater. You need to know why you're doing it, and you need to have the autonomy to do the decisions and take the actions on your own, right? There's the saying, take the authority to where the information is. Like in war, the generals sit somewhere at the other end of the world, and the soldiers see what's happening on the ground. And this never works out well, because there's always this dissonance and gap between the two views of reality.
Yes. Typically, when we start, especially a program like the Software Craftsmanship Dojo, so helping an organization to step up the game of software development with the best practices that we observe in the fields like Formula One, we say since the beginning, guys, to do a change, we need to change what we are doing. So in this moment, it's better to ask for forgiveness than for permission, because otherwise you will be stuck into the atomic habits that you have built so far, and nothing will change. So absolutely agree with you. It's a game of creating a safe space where this kind of boldness to change becomes natural. That is indeed returning to the point that without great leadership, this psychological safe and this dissonance cannot be there.
Yeah. And sometimes when we're discussing that, I always get the urge and have this inner problem that I would like to have some very clear answers, right? I'm a finance person. I'm a very rational thinker. I always think in systems. I would love to give you an answer. You just need to implement this. You just need to do this 5 steps. You need to have those types of one-on-one meetings with this agenda. But to me, what I myself had to learn through my career is this is a false way to think about it, because it will not work, right? Even if it sounds a bit vague and we just speak about culture and people and so on, and one could say, well, this is something I've heard 1,000 times. In the end, this is the core. And you need to understand it for yourself. You need to have seen it, right? There's the saying that you need to see greatness once to be able to reproduce it. And I guess you in your career, what you've told me, you've seen greatness when you were working at Ferrari, because once you've seen greatness once, you will always have that itch when you don't see it, because you know the gap between what could be and what actually is, right?
Yes. Every time I meet with my brother or I go and I meet them, I see something new. And it's fascinating. Every time I go, even in MotoGP, and I see friends here and there, and I see what they are doing, how they are using IT to step up the game. When I see, for instance, Ducati creating this robot that does the scanning of the track, and having these other partners that they are gathering data to understand how to use the tires properly, is something that amazed me, because you see how they are every day improving the greatness that they have. And this is the relentless journey to continuous improvement that a lot of companies, they forgot somewhere in their evolution.
Yeah, and this brings me back to the quote earlier, which I said, where he said, it takes such a mental energy to bring that sense of urgency every day, right? Because we all, as humans, have the feeling after a hard week, after a hard day, after pushing all our energy to say, well, maybe today I relax a bit. Maybe now let's shift that project to next week. Let's not tackle that hard decision. This is just natural, right? And no one has to feel bad because they have it. Everyone has it. But yeah, you need to fight together against this urge.
Yes, I guess that for motorsport or sport in general, and as you know, a sportman and instructor of martial art, it's easy to get a instant confirmation if you are doing it right.
The feedback loop is closed, right? This is the good thing.
Yes.
Because at least you find out quickly if you're on the wrong path or not.
Exactly. If you overdoing, you get injured immediately. So the body is also telling you, hey, if you are underdoing, the body will tell you at the next training, hey, you were too sleepy yesterday and today you cannot run as much as you would like. So
maybe if I quickly chime in here, this is, I think, one of the most important concepts to understand why we believe this private equity approach works. So to give you the background, right, we invest in owner-managed companies. Most of the time, they have been successful. They have built a company out of nothing. They are making good profits. They could just continue as they are. But what they are lacking is that feedback loop, that outside-in perspective, that person who's pushing them, nudging them, shoving them, sometimes also in an unpleasant way, because we all know you need that kind of person, right? If you're training for a marathon and you just do it on your own, it will be extremely difficult. If you get a trainer who tells you, hey, what did you do yesterday? And I saw you didn't sleep well and that now you were slower. You know it yourself as well, right? But if someone tells it to you and pushes you, it can help you. And this is what we tell the companies when we partner with them right from the beginning. You will hate us at some point because we tell you, I mean, this is the point. This is the problem you most like to avoid, and sort of rub the salt in the wound. But in a way, this is our job, right? This is what we need to do, to tell you exactly where it hurts most, and just be a bit annoying and keep pushing for that. Because yeah, most of the times the problems are not super complicated. It's not about inventing something new. It's not about doing something incredible with those small established organizations. It's just facing sometimes those uncomfortable things, getting out of your usual rhythm. And yeah, this is how we see it, the value we provide.
yes, and this one of the key ingredients as well of the research, and why we were able to understand that is a ripple effect. Indeed, the feedback loop needs to be almost instantaneously. And for an organization, instantaneously is not we do a quarter report on the board to understand that the quarter went not that good. And I saw organizations that are still doing this in 2025, where we have tools to do it on a weekly basis. So on Teams, it's possible to do instant feedback loop. If you do social programming with mob or pair programming with TDD and street programming, you are able to instantaneously get the feedback loop from the code, from your peer that you are working. Then at the end of the week, you are rolling up all this data to your board, and the board, Friday evening, they have the full picture of what is going on in the company, which key results are moving, and what is the plan for next week. This is the kind of feedback loop that indeed, in our experience, is the soil where you can nurture a unicorn, because the leadership is not driving blind.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. And this is exactly the same mechanism which works on all different levels of the organization. And it works in your private life. And it's also nothing new or incredibly, but it just works.
It works because it provides you a mirror, I guess. So you say something that is really intriguing. You say that your partners, your founders that you are acquiring, sooner or later they will feel that they will hate you because you are providing them a tough confrontation. But at the end, you are providing them a mirror to look at the mirror and say, hey, I'm your coach. I'm your investor. I see this. Look at this mirror. What do you see?
Yeah, exactly. Of course, it's incredibly important to have a trust-based relationship, and we invest a lot of time and energy in building that relationship. We are very close with the founders, owners we manage, because you need that trust as a foundation to then also tell you something uncomfortable sometimes. So I think this is one angle. The other is you provide the value, or we provide the value similar to you when you advise different clients. You've seen what works at one, you've seen what doesn't work at the other. So if you go to the third one, you can tell them, hey, I can save you an iteration, trying and failing, by giving you some guidance. You also need to acknowledge, I think, that you cannot avoid all trying and failing, even if you have the feeling, I know exactly what will happen. I know exactly what they should do. And I mean, I like to do some sports in my free time, and there it's similar, right? You have to make some learnings on your own. I think everyone who's done or who's tried to achieve something great in the area of sport has found or has faced a problem where, looking back, you would probably say, well, this is what everyone says, that you face this problem. But it's part of the journey, and you cannot accelerate it.
This is intriguing, and you see, it's probably something that if you have kids, you recognize in them as well. Because I can tell my kids, hey, don't do that because you will get something. Okay? They look at you, they nod, then you see the evil face, and they do exactly what you just told them, that it will be dangerous, and then something disastrous happen, and then they look at you with tears. I got some scarf. I told you, but it wasn't enough. So I guess it's in the human nature. We, as leaders, we need to help them to fail, but in a safe way. And the point that you were talking about, trust, is indeed a book that, with all of you, private equity and venture capital, is coming up very often. That is the 5 dysfunction of a team from Patrick Lencioni, where the first layer of the pyramid of working together in an efficient way is the trust. If we don't trust people, how we can work with them? If we don't trust our wife or husband, how we can live in the same house with them? So trust is an underestimated ingredient in a lot of business that are too focused on KPI, I guess, and less in humans.
Yeah, and this is exactly also the fine line that you have to thread as an investor, because on the one hand side, of course, you're you're pushing the company, but on the other hand side, you also want them to be totally honest and tell you if something goes wrong, and tell you as soon as possible, and tell you in a way where they uh, are not afraid of the next board meeting or management meeting, but they value your input, and they know they have a real partner on eye level there who can help them even if something goes wrong. And this is sort of the important aspect for us, because again, right, if this is not established on the management and board level, it will not work on the management and N-1 level, and it has to work throughout the whole organization. And so we try to foster that culture where we speak very openly and not in a scripted way about how the business is doing, what is happening, what is going well, and what is not going so well.
This is also an indicator that we observe a lot of times. When we step into boardrooms, you see immediately which is the fellowship of the people inside the board. And the company that are growing, indeed, investors and C executive, they have a partnership that goes beyond business per se. You see that they are tuned as human beings. You see that the management, the leadership is talking openly with the investor to let them understand their limits. Because this is the funny part that I guess a lot of people, they don't get. Doing a startup means that you are trying to do a business that is innovative, potentially a disruptor. So thinking that they know since the seed stage what are the ingredients to create the product or service is insane. And a lot of founders that we have worked with, they are not capable to talk about their limits or the limits of their company. And this is funny because, especially with companies that are doing product, platform as a service or software as a service as product or services that they offer, they use massively software. So a lot of them, they are thinking that they are doing software in the right way, but the problem is that they don't know even how good looks like. And we return to the point of before. If you don't know, you have to be open and ask for suggestion, help. And this is funny to observe how some board you sniff immediately the tension in the air.
Yeah, the elephant in the room, right? Sometimes it all boils down to one big problem, and everyone knows it, but it's not being faced.
Yeah, and the big problem is simple. I ask you money. I hope that I will provide you some result. I provide you some ideas of results, but I provide you by mistake the ego part of me, so the optimistic result that most probably I will be able to reach. And then, of course, there is a mismatch of expectations, and this is the way that you start to crack this trust, and then the relations start to become difficult. But we have a bond together. You provide me money and you want them back.
Yeah, no, what I find very interesting about your research. I mean, you're focusing on the IT department, right? And your central thesis is basically, I mean, this is my interpretation of it, that IT departments are not are leaving a lot of potential on the street, basically, that they're not reaching the level of excellence and performance they could reach because of various dysfunctions. And lots of them, when I read through it, of course, there's an IT angle to it, but there's also a huge cultural, socio-economic, people component to it. And I mean, we are investing and partnering with IT companies, but I don't have a big IT background myself, right? I more look at it from the organization investment perspective. But I basically see the same patterns then repeat in in our field, and more sort of the interactions between the investors and the management and the board, management within each other. And I think this is what we were now discussing those last few minutes, because it boils down to similar core issues. And maybe this is then coming back to our thesis that we also see a huge untapped potential in small, established, profitable businesses, which are doing lots of things right, which are creating value, but which could do so much more with a few minor tweaks and improvements, which are all not rocket science, which just need to be followed up. There's no common standard. There's no common practice, right? No one goes to university and learns to be a CEO and lead the company. At least I hope they do not do, because that probably also will not work. This is not how to do it. But on the other hand, still, there's a big value in having someone who can help you on that super difficult journey, and doesn't need to be an investor. It can also have various different forms. But I think the end point is, we are all advised, especially in those turbulent times, to find good advisors, mentors, people maybe who have been in the same situation before, have open and frank conversations with them, be humble. We don't know everything. And try to find the best approach.
Yes, what you are highlighting is a fascinating concept, because indeed the research is centered on IT. IT because is the backbone of the more modern society. Software is everywhere. We have software in whatever electric device that we have in the house. If you go in the garage, most probably the car is more a computer on four wheels now than a car.
Trump said when they looked at the Tesla, everything is computer, right? And it became this meme.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. That is indeed what is going on. And it's funny because at the end, not all the organization understood how we arrived to this stage. It's a try and error, improve. Because otherwise we will stay still at the Stone Age. Okay, and a lot of companies, they miss the basic of engineering, and in IT this is totally clear. If especially we look at the automotive, some companies, they have a reputation that they are really reliable. How they create reliability? They test stuff. When something is broken in the dealership, they send it back to the manufacturer, they study it, and they improve it. A typical example is the actual Toyota, that they said, we step up the game even more with gas racing, and the tests are done for the GR model on the competition. I have a lovely GR Yaris, and my car is almost a piece of racing machine on four wheels with a plate. But they are testing it. And then after the MK1, there is the MK2. They are testing the MK2 to most probably be the MK3 in the future. And you see that every stage is improving something that was destroying in the competition. That is the same mindset I found with Ferrari or with Formula One. They were designing components, testing it in a simulator, and then testing it with the real integration until it was blowing up. Disassemble everything, check what was broken, re-engineer the component to get higher quality, retest the system, check what is exploding after it. And this system thinking. But they do it with an engineeristic approach. In software, it's possible to do the same. In an organization as well. In software, for some reasons, people forgot that there are practices that everybody should work with in order that they can do this continuous improvement. That is why I'm skeptic with generative AI code, because these practices are not there. And so how you can improve something that you don't know even how it was generated? You cannot. And so the technical debt is piling.
Let me ask you one question here. So when I was thinking about your research, I was wondering, is it maybe a problem because this IT landscape is still in its infancy? In the grand scheme of things, we don't do it since a long time, right? So engineering, the medical profession, all of those fields have hundreds of thousands years of history. And of course, they also all had sort of their periods where they were on the wrong path and their moments of clarity and insight. Do you think the issues that you're observing are centered in that aspect? Or what do you see as sort of the underlying reason why IT is lacking behind there?
So if I look at the prehistory of IT, the IT departments were run from scientists. But then IT, because it became so popular, it had a hyper growth in the market. Everything in IT went under the anti-pattern from science to sales. That both they start with S, but they have very different behaviors. The sales is trying to sell you whatever is a customer in need of. So now the market was selling for a long time developers that they were only coders, not real engineers. But there was a high demand of them. So and this is the reason also why AI is not that good in creating code, because the language is trained from models that are created, I'm losing my voice today, from models that are created from code base that are not generated from an engineering point of view in the right way. And this is something that, in my opinion, is due to the hyper growth of IT. Also, this hyper growth was an indicator with the anti-pattern of we sell everything, we sell DevOps, we sell Agile, we sell safe, we say whatever is a product in IT. It's a product, even the digital transformation are a product. With the idea, we take your company from A, we transform in B. That is a very unhealthy way to do that. Because in my workshop, I can transform metal from one shape to another. I cannot go with the welder and the grinder transforming a human being from something to something else. It's really unethical, and probably it's also torture that somebody will go in jail. So there are basic stuff that seems to be obvious, but not obvious in IT. And probably because of the high demand. IT is a sector that from academic went in hyper growth and now is really in a early stage of development. And the proof, if we return back to the manufacturer chain of automotive, if we look at the apps of automotive sector, I look at some apps of my motorbikes and then I ask myself, why have you built these apps? It doesn't make any sense. If I look at the review of the apps, they got 0.5 stars, 1 star. So it means that maybe they have created a great product, a great motorbike or a great car. But then the software part for the user is really not getting the point.
I as a German can sing a song about that, right?
Yeah, indeed. But as you see, it's the problem of the market, it's the problem of IT. I guess it's the problem that we are trying to solve, making IT, the blueprint of software, modern software engineering, open source. I'm not the unique one. There are others that are doing it. We decide to go really open source with the model so that every startup can understand since they start to hire developers. This is the way they should behave. And this is why we are so engaged with private equity like you to provide the open source of the software craftsmanship dojo for all the companies that you are touching, because then they finally can understand, okay, this is how we should do software. And then they do with the mirror, the self-reflection. Is what we are doing? If not, okay, this is where we should go and move. So the leadership has some direction, some guidance. And this is what probably can help in this stage IT to become more professional, let me say, because it's not in this moment. And with quantum, it become evident that we have a problem in the software worldwide, because the power of computation of quantum will be so bigger compared to what it is now, that whatever software can be destroyed on a security point of view in a matter of seconds left, or minutes. With this in mind, is the software that we have nowadays secure? And if it's not, what we have to do? So I guess we will arrive a moment where the world will stop and will try to understand that, okay, now we need to create standards for IT. This is what I see on the horizon. I'm not Nostradamus, so I don't know what it will be.
Well, I see where you're coming from, but this is also a very doomy way to look at it, right? So I believe in the power of humankind to solve those challenging problems, and with people like you who are doing their great part in it, we will also manage to face that problem as we've managed to face problems before. I think what you're saying is, and this is probably right, part of the reason IT has just evolved so quickly and so rapidly that it didn't leave enough time for the people to adapt, and is a huge challenge. I know this one story, I'm not sure if you know it, but when the US Army was looking for a new long-range bomber in 1935, they had this amazing new plane, and they had like an air show where they wanted to show this plane. The plane lifted off and it crashed, and it was a big tragedy. And when they then investigated what happened, it was not the fault of the plane. Plane were perfectly fine. It was a human error in that the pilots didn't switch on something they should have switched on. I'm not sure what it was. And so then they said, well, it's just too complicated. Technology has surpassed the human. The plane is too much plane for a person. It's impossible for a person to manage it. But then someone said, well, maybe we just create a pre-flight checklist where we make sure that the pilot switches on all the different things and can remember what they did, because the problem was not that it was too complicated. They managed to do it. It's just, okay, you needed that additional process step as support for the humans to deal with that thing. And this is how the checklist was invented. And maybe this is an analogy to think about it. At one point, it seems impossible and overwhelming, but we just need to invent new processes, standards, common understandings of how we work together to enable us humans to be in the driver's seat and be in the lead. And I think this is exactly what you're working on, and therefore it's fantastic what you're doing there.
Thank you. And this is indeed what we are trying to do, helping organizations like yours to democratize IT done in the right way. Because there are big companies, tech companies like Google, Meta, Amazon, and more, that they are doing it in the proper way. But the small organization, they are not doing it because they don't know how they should do. So helping you in this democratization of IT, I guess it could be a game changer for the future.
And once you've solved the problems in IT, happy to have another chat, and then we can apply the same playbook to small companies and the private equity industry as well, right? I guess you could also there democratize the best practices, checklists, and way how to efficiently and successfully run a small organization. We are just finding those out as we're going, right? We also just getting started, but there are also, as we discussed earlier, there are certain patterns and things which just under best practice point of view you should do, which are not so difficult. And yeah, it's an interesting way to think about it.
And I have to tell you that you touch one of the stuff that I'm working on. That is the second part of the research that is still under research. That is the KBI. That is a key behavioral indicator model to behavioral engineering the behavior of an organization and individuals to go in a certain direction. That is the blueprint for indeed private equity and venture capital, to let you guys understand is the boardroom going in the right direction? Are the people on the field moving in the right direction? When everybody is aware of the mirror that we were discussing before, this is what I'm working on. So more than happy to continue this discussion with you in the future.
Yeah, sounds super cool. I'm excited to see what you've got there.
Yeah, let's do that. We can meet in Munich with some beer and pretzel. And we can have
amazing. Happy to have you there and invite you, of course.
Good. Alexander, good. I see the timer is running too fast. A good indicator here. Do you have any other suggestion or anything that you want to share with the listener?
Maybe reflecting on what we said, just one thing for us in all those types of situations and problems, that the most important thing is always the clarity where you stand and where you want to go, that you need to establish together. What is the reality of where you are currently, and what is the common understanding of where you want to go? And if you got those two things right, then you're already off to a good start. So this is what we try to remind ourselves always. And other than that, also, I think one point we touched on, you need outside support. You need experts who have done it before and who give you honest advice. That's why typical frameworks don't work, but you still need those professional service providers who help you. So this is always the confidence I have in the companies that we invest in, of human beings which have a deep understanding of what they're doing and helping their clients do that in an excellent way. And no matter what happens with AI, it will be critical and important to have those types of people. So yeah, would love to continue this discussion. Happy to hear what other people think about it. Happy to connect on LinkedIn, of course, and then up to our next meeting in Munich, I would say.
Yes, and founders, you have found in Alexander somebody that can really help you in the future. So I'm excited, honestly, that a hub like yours is in Europe, in Munich. Munich, I guess, is the very center of Europe, if you look
exactly.
at the geographical point of view. So I suggest that you have also a connection with Alex, that you ping him and you try to understand if your great idea can work with Alex as a partner. Alex, I want to thank you very much for the discussion. It was funny and inspiring. I hope that our listener enjoy it, and see you soon, digital warriors. And please keep evolving. Don't transform what you have created in something else, because it will become a Frankenstein. And we believe in evolution, because it's the right way to move forward in a human-centered approach. Alexander, thank you so much. See you soon.
Thank you, Michael. See you soon.
Listener, goodbye. See you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening, and please remember to subscribe to the Forge of Unicorns to stay up to date with our latest episodes.